Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I am Tanvi Taneja, and for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in Berlin, Trent Murray. Namaste, Trent.
Namaste to you, Tanvi. It is 1:30 p.m. here in Central Europe, 12:30 p.m. in London. A big show today looking at the European Union as it begins to fill some of its top jobs. We'll also have the latest on the Israel-Hamas conflict, plus the Olympic torch relay in Paris as that city counts down to the Summer Olympic opening ceremony. But first, their headlines.
India reaffirms continued support to Mauritius in its quest for progress. India's External Affairs Minister and Mauritian Prime Minister jointly inaugurate high-impact community development projects in Port Louis. Malta's Roberta Metsola, chosen to head EU Parliament, becomes the first woman to win a second term as head of the EU Assembly. A group of lawmakers call on the EU to strip Hungary of voting rights after Prime Minister Viktor Orban's visit to Moscow and Beijing. Orban says Donald Trump, if elected, can be a peace broker in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And Rwanda's Paul Kagame all set for a fourth presidential term, poised for a landslide victory in Monday's election. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar was received by Mauritian counterpart of his, Manish Gobin, in Port Louis on Monday. Minister Jaishankar said that he looks forward to productive engagements to take forward the special relationship between India and Mauritius. The minister is on a two-day visit, which marks one of the first bilateral engagements undertaken by him following his reappointment. India's External Affairs Minister and Mauritius Prime Minister Praveen Kumar Jugnauth jointly inaugurated high-impact community development projects. Several memorandum of understanding were exchanged, and overseas citizens of India or OCI cardholders were handed in an event in Mauritius capital Port Louis. In a joint address to media, India's External Affairs Minister said that the visit underscores the strong bilateral ties between the two countries.
Is one of the first countries that I am visiting in my current term as External Affairs Minister. It underscores the strength and depth of our bilateral ties. It is also an opportunity to underline India's unwavering commitment to its special and enduring partnership with Mauritius.
External Affairs Minister also called on Mauritius Prime Minister and discussed ways to continue collaboration and strengthen India-Mauritius relationship. In a series of videos posted on social media platform X, India's minister said that the two nations share a very special relationship in various sectors. On to Europe now. As the newly elected European Parliament gathers in Strasbourg for its inaugural sitting on Tuesday, its first task was to elect its president. My colleague Trent Murray is in Berlin. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. So, Trent, it is Roberta Metsola then?
Yeah, that's right. It's a big win for Malta's Roberta Metsola after she secured broad support for a second term as the President of the European Parliament. Now, Metsola, who in 2022 took the post, is only the second President after Germany's Martin Schulz to win another term since the EU Parliament became directly elected back in 1979. In continuing the largely ceremonial role, Metsola will preside over the 720-member Parliament, which negotiates and adopts EU legislative proposals and, crucially, approves the bloc's budget. Addressing the EU Assembly, Metsola said the Parliament should continue to be a strong supporter of Ukraine, the rule of law, and seek the power to propose EU legislation. A group of 63 European Parliament lawmakers has asked the EU to withdraw Hungary's voting rights in the bloc in response to Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's recent visits to both Moscow and Beijing. Viktor Orban has met Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping on a self-styled peace mission to end the war in Ukraine. The lawmakers said Orban had deliberately implied that he was acting on behalf of the entire EU, despite not having the authority to do so. Though lawmakers have no formal ability to strip Hungary of its voting rights other than putting political pressure on Brussels, Hungary took over the rotating EU presidency this month. Meanwhile, in a letter to EU leaders, Viktor Orban himself said that US Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is ready to act immediately as a peace broker in the Russia-Ukraine war if he is elected in November. Orban has long criticised European military support for Ukraine, in contrast to most allies who do support Kyiv's war efforts. Well, let's take you to Brussels now to speak to our correspondent, Alex Carrier. Alex, let's start with Roberta Metsola. A big victory for her with a second term, but it will be a very different parliament this time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Trent. An expected victory for Roberta Metsola. This was possibly the easiest hurdle to clear that the European Parliament is going to have to deal with this week, because more than a quarter of these MEPs are now either in far-right or hard-right groups, and that is very different from the Parliament that was returned in the last elections back in 2019. Now, the European Parliament is all about teamwork, all about coalitions, all about finding the group that you can work with, and those far-right and hard-right parties are not always in the same groups, and at the moment, the governing majority of the European Parliament remains in the hands of centre-left, centre-right and centrist parties. We've seen that with the Green Party supporting Roberta Metsola, trying to find a way to build a coalition. But nevertheless, you have Viktor Orban in Hungary, his Fidesz party aligned with Marine Le Pen's Rassemblement National in France, as well as Giorgia Meloni's Brothers of Italy, forming one far-right group. Then further to the right of them is another group of about 25 MEPs described as anti-woke, anti-feminist, anti-LGBT, anti-support for Ukraine, anti-Green Deal and environmental laws, and that will be a real thorn in the side of those centrist European lawmakers in the next couple of weeks, months, and certainly for the next 5 years. How is that going to manifest this week? Well, the big question now will be Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the European Commission. That building behind me is up for a vote to confirm her presidency on Thursday. Roberta Metsola sailed through. Not sure it'll be quite as easy for Ursula von der Leyen, Trent.
Alex, let's just talk about Hungary if we could, and these calls for it to be voted stripped of its voting rights. Just talk us through the significance of that. Will this letter from MEPs have much impact?
Well, it won't have the impact in so much of actually stripping Hungary from its voting rights. That is not up to MEPs, and at the moment there doesn't seem to be much appetite in the European Council, where all 27 member states come together to make decisions, or in the European Commission behind me to put forward measures to strip Hungary of its voting rights. At the moment, that is not something that is being seriously considered by the rest of the institutions, because it goes slightly against the mindset, the traditions of the European Union, trying to reach agreements through unanimity. To give you some context, back in January, 120 MEPs wrote a letter calling for Hungary to be stripped from its voting rights. This time it's only half that number, so that gives you a sense of the fact that these are important symbols, they're important messages, they're important expressions of the views of 63 elected members of the European Parliament. Whether or not they can have a direct impact is far less likely. What has happened, however, is the European Commission, as a very strong symbol, a strong rebuke of Hungary, and particularly Viktor Orban's trip to China and Moscow in the last couple of weeks, European Commission saying it will not send any top officials, no commissioners, no vice presidents, certainly not the president of the European Commission, to any of the meetings hosted by Hungary in the next 6 months of that rotating EU presidency. That is a strong signal, that says that the Commission is losing patience with Hungary. But for now, that country will keep its voting rights. Trent.
Alex Carrier reporting from Brussels. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drone attacks have reportedly caused a fire at an electrical device factory which wounded at least 6 people in Russian areas bordering Ukraine. The interim governor of Russia's Kursk region said that no workers were injured in the attack. Russia's defense ministry said that air defense systems destroyed 13 drones overnight, including 1 drone over the Kursk region. Local media report that authorities are now considering evacuating people from regions that are close to the Ukrainian border. Israel has struck southern and central areas of the Gaza Strip as part of its military campaign against Hamas. It follows a weekend strike targeting the terrorist group's leadership. The main focus of Israel's advance since May has been largely in the south near Rafah, though its military also has stepped up aerial and tank shelling in central Gaza. On Saturday, Israel struck Mawalsi on the western outskirts of Khan Yunis. The town has been sheltering hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who have fled to the area after Israel declared it a safe zone. Israel has said its strikes targeted Hamas military commander Mohammed Deif, who was an architect of the October 7th attack on Israeli towns and villages that triggered the Gaza conflict. Meanwhile, the US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has met with Israel's National Security Advisor and Israel's Minister for Strategic Affairs in a meeting in Washington on Monday, all to discuss practical solutions to try and bridge differences between Israel and Hamas on a ceasefire deal. Israeli officials have confirmed that Israel is still committed to reaching a ceasefire deal under the terms which were laid out by US President Joe Biden back on 31 May. Discussions have focused on a ceasefire that would secure the release of hostages, while at the same time alleviate the suffering of Palestinians. The US State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that the White House remained optimistic but also realistic at the same time regarding any potential deal.
They discussed the latest in the ceasefire negotiations that are ongoing, where we are trying to reach a ceasefire that would secure the release of hostages, alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people. They talked about plans for the day after the conflict and how to establish governance and security in Gaza. And of course, as always, the Secretary raised the need to even in advance of a hoped-for ceasefire, do more to resolve logistical issues that are preventing humanitarian assistance from being fully delivered across the Gaza Strip. Israel is still committed to reaching a ceasefire, that Israel wants to reach a ceasefire. Obviously, they want to protect their interests. We understand that as part of the negotiating process, but they do want to reach a ceasefire and are committed to these negotiations.
The Israeli army has said that its air defense systems identified some 20 rockets launched from Lebanon on Monday night. Flares and explosions lit up the skies of northern Israel as rockets fired from Lebanon were intercepted over the town of Kiryat Shimona. The army has said that there were no casualties reported from the attack. Dozens of Israeli towns and villages remain evacuated on the border with Lebanon. And the Olympic torch relay has travelled up to the Eiffel Tower on its journey around Paris on Monday. The Olympic flame arrived in the French capital after almost 2 months of traversing through France and its overseas territories. The relay will end with the lighting of the cauldron during the opening ceremony of the Paris Summer Olympic Games. And Tanvi, that is it from me here in Berlin. Just 10 days to go to the Olympics. All very, very exciting.
Indeed. Thank you, Trent. Trent Murray joining us from Berlin on DD India Global. Still to come on the show. India's army says committed to eliminate scourge of terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, pays tribute to 4 soldiers martyred in the Doda encounter. And a documentary about women and their societal struggles called The Brink of Dreams becomes the first Egyptian documentary to win a Cannes Golden Eye Award.
This week on Defence Dynamics, we will analyze news recently to do with India's latest light combat aircraft, the Tejas Mark 1A. We will be exploring the latest advancements from its cutting-edge technology to its impressive combat capabilities. We will dive into what makes this aircraft a game changer for Indian Air Force. And we'll look at how the Tejas compares to its competitors, including the Chinese J-10. Don't miss in-depth analysis only on DD India on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. IST.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I'm Tanvi Taneja. On to Central Africa now. Citizens of Rwanda voted to elect their next president on Monday, with early results showing incumbent Paul Kagame in the lead with 99% of votes. Monday's vote is widely expected to give Kagame a 4th term and extend his near-quarter century in charge of the East African country. Presidential candidates Frank Habineza from the Democratic Green Party and an independent Felipe Maimana said that they were hoping to make some progress. But analysts and rights groups said that Kagame's overwhelming victory is certain. Results are expected by 20th of July. Police in Kenya fired tear gas to disperse protesters in Kitengela town demonstrating against the financial reforms by President William Ruto. President Ruto had planned to introduce a financial reform, including tax hikes, which were widely criticized by Kenyans as it burdened their already impoverished lives. Submitting to the pressures, President Ruto has recently withdrew $2.7 billion in tax hikes and sacked nearly his entire cabinet. Yet the protests that started in June continue, demanding Ruto to resign from his position. And next we take a look at what else is making news around the world. A bus carrying more than 50 passengers flipped in a highway tunnel in Spain's Catalonia, injuring dozens, with 3 in critical condition. The injured were taken to nearby hospitals for medical assistance. The highway was closed for further traffic. According to a UNICEF report, nearly 50,000 people have sought shelter in eastern Sudan. The ongoing war between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces (RSF) has displaced more than 10 million people so far. Also, the recent ceasefire talks have given no result. A gunfire attack near a mosque in Muscat on Monday night claimed 4 lives and injured many. The details about the cause of the attack are still unknown. Oman is one of the most stable and neutral countries in the Middle East, despite the turbulent regional situation. The militant attack on the Bannu military base of Pakistan killed 8 security officials. This is what the military confirmed on Tuesday. 10 militants were also killed in the counter-attack. The base neighbours, North Waziristan, has been a hotbed of Islamist militancy. Russian President Vladimir Putin was seen driving his new Lada car to inaugurate the latest part of Moscow's St. Petersburg toll road. It is one of the largest infrastructure projects in Russia. The new road bypasses all populated areas in Moscow. Novgorod and Leningrad regions. The Indian Army has said that it is committed to eliminate the scourge of terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir as it paid tribute to 4 soldiers martyred in a gunfight with terrorists in Doordarshan district. Based on specific intelligence inputs, a joint operation was launched by the Army and Jammu and Kashmir Police on Monday following an exchange of fire with terrorists in the Desa area of the district. Additional troops were called in later to support the counter-terror operations underway in the area. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has expressed condolences and said that the government is committed to restore peace and order in the region. And in this sad news, a wreath-laying ceremony for the martyred soldiers was held earlier today. India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal is in Reggio Calabria to participate in the outreach session of the G7 Trade Ministers meeting hosted by Italy. On the sidelines of the meeting, the minister met New Zealand's Trade Minister Todd McClay. The two leaders explored opportunities to give further impetus to bilateral trade and investment ties for the mutual growth of the two countries. Earlier, Piyush Goyal met Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Valdis Dombrovskis. The discussions focused on promoting India-EU trade and economic collaborations, including the ongoing Free Trade Agreement (FTA) negotiations. The e-mobility R&D roadmap for India was officially launched in New Delhi on Wednesday. In an exclusive interview with Doordarshan, Professor Ajay Kumar Sood, the principal scientific advisor to the Government of India, highlighted India's aim to achieve energy independence. The principal scientific advisor's office is also working on rare minerals like that of graphene to make it accessible and future ready for the country.
The principal scientific advisor, Professor Ajay Sood, sir, you have just come out with the R&D roadmap for e-mobility. Tell us, what can we expect from that particular draft paper that you guys have come out with?
Point is, what will happen 5 years down the line? What are the technologies which will mature, and what are the directions this whole area will take up? So this roadmap done along with all the expert members has put together about 34 R&D challenges which need to be solved for India to take a leadership role in the future.
The scientific community, everyone is talking about that this could be the graphene age. Where India stands in respect to that?
In the R&D sector, on graphene production on a small scale has been done by many groups. But now the point is, how can we take it on a large scale production? I have a feeling that if we put together all the task forces and program, it can be done in 3 to 4 years.
So that was Professor Sood, the principal scientific advisor, saying that the roadmap is there and they have come out with the extensive roadmap for e-mobility and will be taking it forward in due course of time. With camera person Anand Kumar, this is Taposh Bhattacharya for GD India from Delhi.
An extra story celebrating the struggles of women. A documentary film, The Brink of Dreams, based on a group of women from Egypt's El Barsha village, won the Cannes Golden Eye Award. With this, it became the first Egyptian documentary to back this prestigious award. Directed by Nada Riyad, the movie showcases the social struggles of women in Upper Egypt and their ways of tackling them. The movie was premiered at Cannes Critics Week and is set to release in the country soon. Take a look.
وصلتش للي انا عايزاه وما عملتش البومات وما اتشهرت.
انا اساسا عايز تروح تعمل ايه في القاهره؟ ما تعرفيش تمشي في الشارع اساسا.
انا حلمت ان انا بطير.
So that's all for this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on our different social media handles, Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram at DD India Live. And for those on the go, you can catch all the latest news and updates from India and the world on our DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code on the screen to download now. So we will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.